All right, you guys, 602 Booster back at it again with another one. Just want to go over with you the top 10 things that I check before I ride. You could even call these my pre-ride rituals if you want. So I'm not going to waste any time. Let's get right into it because we all know we should perform a pre-ride check, but you know, we're human. We tend to skip them from time to time. But it's not like we're like flying in like a 737 full of, you know, hundreds of people, thousands of feet above ground. But while we think that only our lives are at stake when we ride, what happens to us, to be honest, can affect others both directly and indirectly. So the reality is that your pre-ride check, when it's done regularly, it should only take a few seconds to do it. So let's go into the first thing that I check on when it comes to my pre-ride ritual. The first thing is just do a visual inspection. Look at the bike. I mean, and especially if you have a new bike, you know how when you get your new bike, you couldn't help but just gazing at the bike every time you walked up to it. You know, you probably can, you know, caress it, rub it, kiss it, whatever you want to do with it. I mean, there's no shame in admitting it, be honest. We've all done it. But what's different about this look over is that you're actively looking for problems. Does anything look loose? Does anything look out of the ordinary? You want to give your bike a once over before moving on to anything specific. The more familiar you are with the daily condition of your bike, of course, you're going to have a better chance of noticing something that's amiss. For example, if you've got a fork seal that's leaking, it'll usually, you know, kind of cry a tear or two before it turns into a full-on leak that can contaminate your brake pads, and you don't want that. So again, first thing is a visual inspection. Just look it over. Make sure that nothing's weird going on that's obvious. Next thing I want to say, number 9 is, and this is something kind of crazy because people think it's weird when I say it, but fuel. Fuel is kind of under the factor, but you're not really going to get anywhere without gas. I mean, for example, just look at your bike gauge. I mean, my bike has a bike gauge, fortunately, my Busa does. So I could always take a peek at that. It only takes a second to see if I got gas. And of course, if I don't, I could just hop to the first gas station before I head out on my ride and I could have gas. But if you have a bike that doesn't have a fuel gauge, like my DR650, you could always reset your bike's trip meter at the beginning of every tank full, and that'll give you an idea of how much gas you have left just by looking at that trip meter. Check your fuel. Don't be that guy that shows up to the bike meet and you're ready to, you know, everybody's ready to go and you always got to stop and get gas. Don't be that guy. Next thing, number 8, check your oil. Some bikes make it really easy. You know, just hold your bike upright, you know, balance it, whatever you need to do, put it on a stand, and glance at the sight glass to check the level, at least once a week. This is something that I personally like to do to make sure that I'm not riding out on a bike that's dry and doesn't have any oil in it. So yeah, that's number 8. Next thing, number 7, chain adjustment. Now, to be honest, your motorcycle's chain can play a supremely important role in propelling you and your bike down the road. It's obvious. If you have a poorly adjusted chain, it'll hamper the quality of your ride, and when it's loose, it'll increase what's called drive line lash, which means it's making it hard for you to manage your throttle inputs without you having to snatch the throttle, you know, abruptly. You don't want that. And if you have a chain that's too tight, it can interfere with your suspension and your ability to let that, and the bike's ability to let that suspension fully compress. So you really won't get a good feel for your ride. Everything will feel really stiff. Also too, I mean, if you think about it, if your chain's not adjusted correctly or if it's become worn, it could be a safety hazard. When a chain fails, they can do some pretty dramatic things. I mean, aside from not directing your engine's power to the rear wheel, worst case scenario is you may have it wrap around your rear sprocket and lock up the rear wheel, and you don't want that. And then you've got maybe the popular thing, which is a chain holding through the engine case. And that's going to just spew oil everywhere all over the surface of the rear tire. Again, this happens in seconds, so you really don't have much time to react. And this actually happened to me. I've actually had a chain that just completely, the chain just came loose and it was just thrown out of the back of the bike. Fortunately, no one was behind me, you know, but again, you know, I wasn't hurt or anything like that. The bike didn't go down, but the last thing you want is to cause someone else behind you a headache when they see your 116 link metal chain coming straight at their head. That's the last thing you want. So make sure that your chain is properly adjusted before you go out on a ride. Number 6, make sure you check your cables, specifically your throttle cable. Your control cable is something that rarely ever fails on its own. Usually what happens is they get brittle and frail over time. So try to check your cable's movement without the engine running on a regular basis. Make sure, of course, that throttle cable does snap back in place, that there's no drag or there's any lag or anything like that. The last thing you want to have happen is your throttle gets stuck while you're on a ride, and yeah, you're gonna have some problems. It's pretty obvious there. So just check your throttle cable, make sure that it's legit before you take off on your ride. Number 5 are your brakes. So obvious, the brakes. They're pretty much the most important, in my opinion, the most important system on your bike. Your bike can stop a lot faster, of course, than the engine can accelerate it. Believe me, it can. Having brakes that are functioning at their very best, of course, is important. Especially if you're on a twisty road, you want to make sure you have good brakes. So check your brake lines, check your levers, make sure your levers are in good condition, that they're not, that you got a good pressure from your brake calipers. Give the lever a couple of squeezes before you even start up the engine. And make sure that you're looking, and really what you're looking for is the same level of stiffness from the last time that you rode it. If for some reason the last time you rode it, all of a sudden now the bike brake lever feels, softer than before, you might have a leak, or there might be air inside of the line, so you definitely want to make sure you bleed your brakes. But again, it should be a consistent feel. The brakes should feel nice and firm when you squeeze them every time. But if it feels like they're soft, even on the rear brake, make sure you don't neglect it. Make sure you do not neglect that rear brake. There's so many guys out there that, don't ride with the rear brake. Personally, I think it's stupid. I mean, you want to have that rear brake so that way you got 100% stopping power. So yeah, check your brakes. Make sure they're good before you head out. Kind of going hand in hand with brakes to number 4 are the tires. Tires and the air pressure specifically is really going to determine your handling. A tire's air pressure, of course, is going to determine its profile, which is going to affect how the motorcycle does handle. If you regularly check your tire's air pressure, you don't really need to check it every time you ride, but you should at least check the tread for any foreign objects every time you walk around the bike or when you ride it. I mean, of course, you might have to take a few extra moments to roll your bike back and forth to check the entire tire. Realistically, it's not going to happen very often, but it is important for you to check the bulk of the tire. And honestly, you'll be surprised how frequently you might notice something that gets stuck in the tread. Like if you have a rock that got stuck into the tread, or you might even notice a nail or something. But it's better to note that before you get on the ride than after the fact. So definitely go ahead and make sure you check out those tires. Make sure those tires look good and you don't have any problems there. Number 3 is lighting, in my opinion. Anyone who's ever had a bulb fail, especially on a single headlight bike like mine, I got a Busa, it's a single headlight. I got a DR650, that's a single headlight. If you have that and your light goes out, yeah, and you're riding home at night, yeah, you're gonna get stopped. Cop's gonna pull you over, and it's kind of hard to see, to be honest. So make sure that your bulbs are working good. If you've got LEDs, great. You probably will barely ever have a problem. But just make sure that your headlight works. That your also make sure you got your high beam and low beam if your bike has that, and especially turn signals and brake lights. They're pretty important if you, especially get to ride your bike around other people. Turn signals and brake lights are also important. So make sure that you check your lights. I mean, it just takes a second. Just, flip both your signals on, look at the lights reflected off of the wall of your garage, or, put your hand in front of the light, or, something like that, just to make sure that the lights are working the way that they should. And again, when you check your brakes specifically, make sure that your rear brake lever does turn on the brake light as well, instead of just the front brakes. There's so many bikes and guys that I've seen out there that when they squeeze their front brake, the light comes on, but when they squeeze their rear brake, it doesn't come on. Or shoot, even vice versa. Some guys have the rear brake pedal that's wired up, but not their front brake. So make sure that both brake pedals will activate the brake light on your bike. Number 2, this one really doesn't so much have to do with the bike, but I've done this 100 times, I can't even lie. I'll just ask you, I mean, who hasn't accidentally ridden off with their helmet unstrapped? I'm gonna be honest, just fess up though. I mean, I'm gonna be honest. If your helmet isn't firmly attached to your head, it's obviously not gonna do its job when you need it to do it the most. So my ritual when I'm pulling out of the garage is just do a quick check of my strap. I just double check it to be sure. That's pretty much one thing that I really have to check on. I mean, make sure that that helmet is, the helmet strap is tightened on correctly. I mean, you don't want to get down the road and all of a sudden, you start feeling that popping in your ear when that strap starts bouncing up against your helmet. If you felt that, you know what I'm talking about. So that's number 2. Make sure your helmet is strapped on. And to me, the number 1 thing, and this is something that doesn't have to do with any of your gear, it has to do with you as a rider. Number 1 is your attitude. As fun and relaxing it is to ride a motorcycle, I never ever go out for a ride to just blow off some steam or when I'm angry about something. Because when that happens, you aren't thinking rationally. And usually what happens is it causes you to make serious mistakes. Give yourself a chance to kind of cool off before you get on the bike, because no one wants to be a statistic out there. And the sad thing about it is that the guys that go out there and make those mistakes, you never hear from them again. So you definitely won't have another opportunity to go back and change things. So definitely make sure that you're in the right frame of mind before you actually go out on the ride. But those are my pre-ride rituals, my 10 things that I kind of check on before I go ride. And again, they sound like a lot of things, but to be honest, when you walk up to your bike, you're already doing most of it when you walk up to your bike, but it's just now you can be aware of it. So let me hear what you have. What are your pre-ride rituals? What do you do before you hop on your bike and go for a ride? It could be for a short ride, it could be for a long ride, whatever. What are your pre-ride rituals? What is it that you'd make sure that you do every time you get on your bike? Leave a response in the comment section below. Make a video about it and tag me in it. I want to make sure I get all of your opinions on this. What is it that you guys do? Or are there some things that I do that you agree with, something that you don't agree with? Or do you just not even have any pre-ride rituals at all? You just hop on it and go. That's up to you. But yeah, leave me a comment. Let me know. Drop me a line down there. Let me know what you think. Do you have any pre-ride rituals that are different from mine? I'm sure you do. So let me know. 602 out.